This. It's Election Day in New York, where voters will head to the polls for a series of high-stakes Democratic primaries. Mayor Zohran Mamdani will test his political influence as he and his allies back several progressive contenders in their attempt to unseat two Democratic incumbents. Let's bring in MS Now senior Capitol Hill reporter and host of Way Too Early, Ali Vitale, and political anchor for Spectrum News, Errol Louis. My thanks to you both for being here. Errol, I know you've been watching these races closely. Let's just start with the Mamdani factor here. You know, he's obviously only a few months in. Poll numbers look good. This is a pretty aggressive use of some political capital to take on incumbents from from the Democratic Party. Why is he doing this?
That's right. He's spending all of his political capital, and he gave the reason, really, in a speech just the other night, a final rally for the candidates that he's supporting. He's saying that the path to the White House in 2028 starts today, Tuesday. He's saying that this is the path forward for the whole Democratic Party, not just a matter of bumping off a couple of incumbents here or there. He's kind of thrown himself in with those who want to make war on Democratic moderates. One of the incumbents who they're trying to unseat is the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. So these are not just, backbenchers who haven't been doing much. This is part of the House leadership that they're saying needs to be displaced today, right now, in order to win more in the next few years.
But obviously the electorate in New York City, very different than most of the rest of the country. Does Mamdani offer a theory of the case as to how they'd scale up?
It's a very interesting question that I intend to ask him the next time I interview him. I mean, because look, I mean, some of what's going to happen. I moderated the debates with all of these candidates that they've been pushing. They've got some ideas that will not sell in Des Moines or in, Cleveland or in some of these other parts of the country. And I don't know what the plan is on how to sort of turn that into, what I have heard from their strategists is that they want people who are going to fight, get themselves arrested, introduce legislation, whether or not it has a chance of getting a hearing or ever becoming law. And I guess in the long term, they want to shift the entire political discussion substantially to the left. And that's the goal.
When you talk about scalability, that is one of the things that fellow New Yorker Hakeem Jeffries would point to in his tenuous truce, it seems, with Mamdani. And in a lot of these primaries, it pits the Jeffries-backed candidate, the incumbent, against Mamdani's own desires. So how are you thinking about that? Kind of a subplot of New Yorker versus New Yorker.
Well, yeah, it's a real fight. I mean, It's a real scrum, and it's happening down. I won't bore everybody with the state legislative races that are a part of this entire insurrection that's going on. But look, the reality is they're spending tens of millions of dollars on these races, and I think there's going to be a question that's called at some point in the future. Was this the best use of Democratic time and money and energy and ideas to fight over a 5 or 6 degree difference between I mean, they're all progressives, but they're saying, well, you're not the right kind of progressive. You're not right on this issue. You're not right on that issue. You're not young enough. You've been around for too long. You're not fighting hard enough, even if there is no legislation that could conceivably make it through a Republican-controlled House of Representatives.
So New York is among 4 states that will decide primary elections today, but not every registered voter will get to cast a ballot. And Ali, you have reporting on that, please.
Yeah, because many of the races that we're talking about here in New York today are examples of safe blue seats, which means the real contest and, of course, the real choice for voters happens now today, not in November. And yet millions of voters might not be able to have their voices heard when it matters. As more states redraw their congressional lines ahead of the midterms,
88 ayes and 52 nays.
The general election map is getting more predictably red or blue.
Now it's even harder to vote.
That doesn't just give parties an edge in November. In most places, it makes November almost a formality. The real contest in these safer seats is in the primary. And so here we are sitting in New York. Election day is Tuesday. All of you could vote, but raise your hand if you are.
If we are voting?
If you are voting on Tuesday.
Well, that comes with a caveat, Ali.
More than 20 states and D.C. have closed or partially closed primaries, including New York. So if you're not registered with a party, you likely can't vote in the primary.
I'd say I'm here to vote. They say, Mr. Brady, you're not registered. I said, I know. I want a provisional ballot. I get a provisional ballot knowing that it's not going to count. My point is that I want my voice to be heard, and I want them to know that I am there.
These voters are just a few of the more than 39 million Americans not registered to or affiliated with either party.
Somebody calls up and says, "Are you going to vote?" And I say, "Well, I can't. I'm an independent." They say, "Well, you could register as a Democrat."
You could.
Yeah, but I'm not. I'm an independent.
I'm sure you've had similar conversations.
So I did pick a side. And then I decided, you know what, no more. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to either party because I don't belong to either party.
Closed primary supporters argue it keeps the party strong and protects the process from meddling by outside actors.
Yeah, they do that a lot. They say you don't want Elks Club members voting in Rotary Club elections.
John Opdyke founded Open Primaries, a group that advocates for opening up the process.
It's a good image.
And that does sort of sound
right. Logical and rational. The thing that they won't actually grapple with is that that's what happens in a closed primary system.
According to Opdyke and the organization's own polling, about 40% of registered Democrats in New York City say they're actually independents.
They just joined to be able to vote. And there's a million more that won't do that.
According to Gallup, Americans are increasingly identifying as independent, reaching a record high of 45% in 2025. Depending on where they happen to live, millions of voters might not be able to use their voices until the race is already, in effect, decided. That is, unless parties or states make a change.
We should be in a position to choose who represents us, to just let them know what's important to us without having to be constrained by joining their club.
Now, these voters were passionate. They were also hopeful that more states would change and open up their processes so more people could participate in the primary. And some states, like Oregon, are considering doing that. That said, other states are trending in the opposite direction. Take Texas, where just this month, Republican Governor Greg Abbott told attendees at his state's party convention he was going to, in his words, make clear in the future that only Republicans vote in Republican primaries. So again, Lemire, it begs the question, what happens if you're a voter who refuses to pick a side?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It comes in connection with, or at the same time as, we're just seeing, Errol, fewer and fewer true swing states anymore, swing districts anymore, swing states and swing districts, in part because of the redistricting efforts we're seeing. That's including happened here. There's talk in New York. We have seen it in California. We've seen it in Texas, lots of states. And it does feel like there's sort of this basic sort of fundamental American ethos of like you try to talk to your neighbor, you try to build consensus, and we're seeing more and more politicians don't have to do that anymore.
No, that's right. It's harder and harder to do that. There used to be, and it's still enshrined in some state constitutions, that there should not be gerrymandering. There should not be partisan gerrymandering. There are supposed to be independent commissions in some states. There's supposed to be, again, just a legal prohibition against doing what so many political party leaders want to see done. And it doesn't seem to be working. The reality, though, is you have to really accept that people do sort themselves according to ideology, religion, and other kind of factors. And if everybody in a small town all believe kind of in the same direction, that they want certain things to happen, who are we from the outside to tell them that, no, you can't associate and do that? We want to make sure that all kinds of other people get in and sort of muddle the very ideas that you say you want to come together around. So it's a long-standing problem. George Washington and other founding fathers distrusted parties for exactly this reason, factions. But people do tend to sort of group themselves. I mean, the Democratic Party is the oldest political party in the world. They came together to get the Bill of Rights passed. There were people who didn't believe in what, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, so to the extent that people want to, either in a legislative body or as voters, get together around certain ideas, I think we want to make sure we don't sort of do away with that. That people who truly can't pick a side on something like abortion or voting rights or, the right to carry arms, if you can't make a decision, maybe you should stay outside the room and let those of us who have an opinion get together and figure out what to do.
Political anchor for Spectrum News, Errol Louis. Errol, great to see you. Thank you for joining us. MS Now senior Capitol Hill reporter and host of Way Too Early, Al Vitale. Thank you as well.